Greetings, programs, and welcome to the Christmas episode of the Awesome Friday podcast for 2023. My name is Matthew, and joining me on this holiday occasion is Simon. Say hello, Simon.
Ho, ho, ho. Hello, ho, ho. Hi, everyone. That was my Santa impression. Yeah, joining you as a special one-off Christmas episode. Wherever you are, I hope you have done more Christmas shopping than I have, which is zero. Actually, I've got a few bits thanks to Amazon. Thanks to Honest Jeff's online emporium, I've got a few things. But the difficulty this year is...
I was going to say, for the first time, I am actually finished Christmas shopping.
Are you?
It is December 17th, and I can't tell if I'm ashamed or completely unashamed to admit that this is the earliest I have been 100% complete ever.
I usually do all my shopping
usually I'm like right down to like the 23rd. But yeah, I've purchased gifts for all of the people who need to have gifts purchased for them at this point in my life. It's great.
I'm very jealous. I'm working right up until the Friday of next week, and then it's suddenly Christmas. So I hope that I can... Oh, we've got you over a week yesterday as well. You and your fine wife are coming over for best family Christmas.
Indeed.
So looking forward to that as well. So yeah, I need to hit Jeff up and have some things sent to me quickly. I think.
Yeah. That's actually one of the things that helps. Like I hate having to patronize Uncle Jeff's online shop, but my sister lives away, and I'm sure you can appreciate this as your family lives in a different country. But like, it's so much easier to just buy a thing and pay the like $4 to have it gift wrapped and have it show up at their door than literally any other way. Although my dad insists on like personally shopping and wrapping and then mailing gifts. But the downside is that the gifts are often late. So
yeah, Canada Post, man. My first year I moved to Vancouver, so 2007, Christmas 2007. I went and bought physical gifts for everyone, and the amount I paid for postage was double the total amount I paid for all the gifts. And some of them didn't ever arrive. My parents have sworn never to use postage now because so much goes missing. Canada Post is not the most reliable of postal services, as I think.
This is an entirely different podcast, but the reason for that is that the government doesn't fund the system, and I hate it. I hate I hate the capitalist swing that we insist that our government agencies need to not just break even, but make money, because that's not what... Like, honestly, they should fund the shit out of things like Canada Post, because we need things to get reliably from point A to point B, just for the economy's sake, and also to keep the costs down. Like, it needs to be affordable for people to send things the 5,000 miles it is from Vancouver to St. John. I think that looking at these services with a profit motive is a mistake.
Doesn't make any sense at all.
It makes me a bit of a communist, but like we need to like look at things like, and the same thing with like healthcare. Like healthcare in this country is a mess, and it is underfunded, and everyone blames the federal government, but it is actually provincial responsibility. And the reason, and like, it's so frustrating to watch people just like blame the liberal federal government whilst it's the conservative premiers that are fucking up the system. I hate it so much. And this is a different podcast than it should be, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you want your dose of Canadian politics, maybe I should start a different show.
The whole idea of a postal company needing to show exponential growth and profit is kind of lunacy, really. And have the whole funding based on that proviso is lunacy, and it extends to everything you're saying as well. So America's going through a similar thing.
I mean, it's often just like the answer is always just fund the system. Like that's it. Just fund the system. Like that's the answer to so many of our problems. And then you have provinces like Ontario, where my sister lives, complaining about budget short. Like they can't afford to pay for one thing whilst having $20 billion, like just sitting there not doing anything. Like they can fund the system. They just choose not to, and it's very frustrating. And it's not in keeping with the spirit of Christmas. See, I've brought us back on point.
Nicely done. That's why you're a pro. Okay, let's move on from the politics talks because I have exciting news in our bonus round episode, which you can listen if you're a Patreon patron, which I suggest you do. It's $2 a month, and you get all of our extra ramblings every week. We talked about Jack Reacher being a perfect dad action movie, and I've got exciting news because I finally watched the peak of dad movies that's been on my watch list for decades, I think now, which is Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. After ever since I've known you, you've told me to watch this movie, and it's taken some time, and I've owned it for a long time, and I've never found the right time to watch it. Partly, I will admit, I was really worried that I would hate it because I don't like boat movies. I'm hot and cold on Russell Crowe. I don't tend to like naval dramas. When I was growing up, there'd often be BBC loves naval dramas. Never interested in any of them, and so I had some trepidation because I didn't. It's like the cat's in the box. Like I neither love nor hate this movie until I watch the movie.
Well, you love and hate it. You love and hate it until you observe it. Yes, that would be a more apt way of saying it. But
I knew I was safe about 10 minutes in. This fucking movie opens with just casually the best boat fight scene I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, first off, let me just say, it's a ship, sir. Not a boat.
Boats and ships are not interchangeable.
No, you're British. You should understand this.
My God, why?
Next thing, you're going to tell me you don't know the difference between a man of war and a sloop. You son of a bitch. But let me just also, and this is a radio show, so let me just, I'm just going to tell you that I'm leaning right into the microphone just for this special moment where I get to say, I fucking told you so. I told you so many times.
You should do like literotica, like storytelling with that voice close to the camera microphone. I'm sure there's ladies listening right now who would agree with me. How about that, ladies?
I'm pretty sure there is lady listening. Yes, but two white dudes with a movie podcast. There's at least there's certainly one. There's got to be one.
Sure, I'm sure that one person would love to hear you read things into the microphone. So it turns out Peter Weir's a great director, but what I also didn't know about this movie at all is that it's basically a 2-hour cat and mouse story between two boats. It's very similar to that Star Trek episode where Kirk does the same. What a really, really early OG series where he and another ship are going like.
Yeah, you're talking about an episode called The Balance of Terror, where he squares off against a Romulan warbird that is cloaked and attacking Federation outposts.
Right. That's a really good episode too. And basically, this is a movie with the same thing, and it's fantastic. It's so good, and it just opens. It goes straight into it, and it's so well written and acted. You get to learn who people are. Like it doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel like it's missing any context because you learn it as they go on. Russell Crowe is spectacular in this film. Mm-hmm. And then but I texted you 10 minutes in. There's 2 moments where I texted you things that happened in this movie, and you reply with the next line said exactly as exactly as the person on screen says the exact line. Like the what's it? Lose them in the fog, Tom. Like lose them in the fog, Tom. And also
put us in that fog, Tom.
Give me your Paul Bettany something about the losses in wartime or something. What's that?
Oh, line? the losses in actual battle are the easiest to add.
Yeah. And that's exactly the delivery. Like I don't know how many times you've seen this film, but I texted you not even what the scene was, but oh my God, like as a reaction to something on screen, and you texted the next fucking line to the movie. That's impressive.
Yeah. I think you texted me about, you were like aghast at how they, there's a scene in that movie where like the topsoils come down and and it's dragging them under in a storm and they have to cut it away and there's a man out clinging to it. So they're knowingly sending this man to his death. And you were reacting to that. And I was like, I texted the first line of the next scene where they're lamenting it.
And the kid, the scene where the kid gets his arm amputated, that kid actor is I've taught a lot of kid actors, and it's like finding the truth in things like that is a big part of it. And he was incredible when he gets his arm cut off and the camera just is on his face.
So that kid,
oh my god, I found that unsettling.
So that kid, his name is Max Purkis, and I know this because I've looked him up a number of times because he was in he was in Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World, and he played Octavian Caesar, who grows up to be Caesar Augustus in HBO's series Rome, in the first season and the first bit of the second season before they age him up with a different actor. And he is incredible in both of those things, and he just stopped acting. He's like a movie executive now. He's like works in sales for a distribution company. He decided he didn't want to be an actor. He's legitimately great in both of those things.
He's great in that film. He's so great. And later on, in one of the funniest moments that I felt akin to one of the sailors on the boat, when this kid is then given command during this big like operation, which is fantastic. He tells this one sailor to do something starboard, and the sailor's like, "What?" And he's like, "The right hand side, starboard's the right hand side." And it's just such a little moment that shows him, like, this whole film is
scene where they're about to board another ship, so they're putting armbands on. And he's like, "Put it on your right arm," and everyone's like, "Oh," and he's like, "Your starboard arm."
Yeah, and the film is so well written. With like, one of the films we're talking about is the opposite of this film in how it's written, in that it's all about character context and little bits of information. It's just a real pleasure to watch. And the audacity of this movie, I'm going to spoil the end of this movie. This 2-hour movie, which is about a cat and mouse chase, ends with the same cat and mouse chase basically evolving to chapter 2. And it feels satisfying. I don't know how the hell it manages that, but it feels like every character has their arc. Every character comes around, learns something, and is better for it. And it is incredible film. And where are the other films made like that now? Like, where is that genre gone? I know it bombed horribly, which is probably the answer to my question.
Yeah, I think it certainly didn't financially perform as warranted.
Yeah, it did badly.
And it's frustrating to me that we live in a world where I think this movie made it made $210 million or something like that, but its budget was 150. So it's, when you factor in the cinema's cut and the marketing budget like that, it's a pretty big. Nobody went to see this movie, which I feel is a huge oversight, because it is legitimately, I think, one of the It's also a shame that it came out in 2003, which means that it lost all of the Oscars to Lord of the Rings, if my memory serves.
Yeah,
because Return of the King came out the same year and won 11 Academy Awards. I think it won a couple. It won cinematography, which was one of the only ones I think that the Lord of the Rings was not nominated for. And it won sound editing, which is a perfect win.
Yeah,
which again, Lord of the Rings wasn't nominated for. And it was also, I think it was nominated for, it was also nominated for sound mixing and art direction, and a bunch of other awards, and all of them went to Lord of the Rings. And to be fair, Lord of the Rings is fucking great. It's well deserved, but I feel like this is Billy Boyd is in this movie, who played Pippin in Lord of the Rings, and this is, I would say, as a person who adores Lord of the Rings, this is Billy Boyd's best film. And he plays a fairly minor character. He plays a guy who steers the boat, basically. But every time he's called on to actually deliver a line, it's so perfect. It's such a well-made film. I don't get people who don't like it, and I'm upset that we're not 10 movies deep into the Aubrey Maturin universe of films.
So, I would be curious, maybe you can answer this. I have no interest in naval history or battles at all. So I've never read any of these books, but I wonder if this book is representative of the kind of the feel. Sorry, if this movie is representative of the feel of the book that it uses or books that it uses. I wonder if I would maybe try and read them. I don't know. Have you read the books at all?
So I actually haven't, which I know is a problem or a situation to be solved. But I know there's lots of people who there's like 20 plus of them, and this movie is based on two of them. Like it's a fusion of two of them. That's why it's called Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World, because the two books are literally called Master and Commander and The Far Side of the World. Um, but lots of people love them, and I've always meant to. I just have not made time for reading. Like I barely make. We're in a book club together, which I know is a shock to our listeners that we do things together. But I barely make time to read the books we choose for our book club. So
Yeah,
picking another thing at the moment seems like it's something I need to find a way to make time for. I guess that's all I'm saying. But yeah, I mean, Master and Commander, perfect film. I fucking told you so.
Yeah, you did indeed, and I do. We talked about trying to. Oh, it was after we recorded. There's no 4K of it, and I feel like it really deserves a very high quality transfer. I watched it on DVD, and it was gorgeous on DVD. So I wonder even if there's a Blu-ray knocking around, I might seek out at some point.
There's actually a really gorgeous. There was very briefly, and I think it was an exclusive to the reseller Zavi. But there is actually a gorgeous Steelbook Blu-ray that you can only find used now. And the cover of it is the surprise, like coming out of the fog, and it's
surprise.
It's gorgeous. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a perfect film. And again, I'm very upset that we're not like 10 films deep into this cinematic universe. Because the books, as I understand it, the books start out with him taking command of a ship, and by the end, he's like retired and is now the captain of a privateer. Like it goes places, and Paul Bettany's character is like a spy for the crown, which is sort of alluded to at one point in the movie, but he's like goes on spy missions for the crown. And like, I have read a bunch of Horatio Hornblower, and I actually do admittedly like the Ewan Griffith version that I think ITV made, like 8 TV movies of Hornblower.
Yeah,
I quite like those too, but this is on a different level than all of that.
For sure.
Makes me actually kind of want to read. There's a science fiction book series that is very nakedly a science fiction adaptation of Horatio Hornblower, where the captain's name is Honor Harrington. I think that's it. I kind of want to seek those out and read them too, because that is basically like Napoleonic War but space.
What's the show called?
It's not a show; it's a book series. And
okay.
I think the main character's name, I believe, is Honor Harrington. It's another one I've kind of thought I should seek out at some point, because it seems like it would be directly up my street.
Yeah, I think so.
But anyway, we're now 18 minutes into our podcast about 2 movies, and we haven't even mentioned what they are yet. So we should probably do that. So let's segue. We're going to be talking about 2 movies this week. One of them is a Netflix release, and the other one is a Melancholy Christmas Story. And we're going to talk about the Netflix release first. And I think I'll take you through the basic setup for Leave the World Behind, which stars Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke and a number of other people. And I think this is a spoiler, but I think I'm going to take you through the basic setup because I know for a fact that Simon hated this movie.
Right.
But the basic setup is that Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke are a married couple, and they decide they need to get out of the city for a length of time, go on holiday with their 2 kids, one of whom is obsessed with Friends, which I think is an adorable through thread. And then the first or second night that they're there, Myha'la Ali and his daughter show up and say, "This is our house. We need to come in and stay here because something's going on." And the rest of the film is the collapse of Western society with some very ham-handed messages about how, like, we are useless without our smartphones, we are useless without our entertainment. It would take a very small nudge to turn us from a functioning society into absolute chaos if done correctly. And it's a movie that exists. It is on Netflix. It is written and adapted by Sam Esmail, the guy who made Mr. Robot, a show I've never seen. And I think the best sort of single phrase descriptor of this film is ham-handed. Like, it is unsubtle to a point where I'm not sure that Sam Esmail knows what subtlety is. Like, you know that meme of Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, and there's the meme quote of him being like, "I know other authors who use subtext, and they're all cowards." That is this movie. That is this movie. I don't think it's totally unredeemable. I think that there's actually some really interesting camera work. Like, the cinematographer is really, like, going overboard in a couple of moments in really interesting ways. And I think that despite having not much to work with, I think that Ethan Hawke does a pretty good job. And I think that Julia Roberts is giving her all again to material that's not that great. And I could listen to Mahershala Ali read the goddamn phone book. So this is all fine. It is not a great movie, though. And I'm struggling to find anything more positive to say about it. I honestly don't really want to spend a lot of time on this movie because it's not worth any time. It's not the worst movie of the year because Ghosted exists, and because Hypnotic exists on Amazon Prime, which I know you haven't seen. And spoiler, just don't see that one either. Like this, but it's not good, and I don't think you should see it. There, that's my review.
What's interesting is that we're probably going to argue, as we have, the only thing we've argued about this movie is determining the level to which how terrible it is, like compared to Ghosted. Mainly, I think it's worse than Ghosted. I think it's trash. Like, and when I say trash, I mean I spent a significant portion of my life teaching film studies, and the first thing we would do is do a film project where these college era kids would write, direct, act in the things, and we take it as a starting point, and we learn about adding literally any nuance, literally any subtlety, interesting script to show character thoughts and connections without stating them outright. This film is the best example of first semester film studies like project. It is so amateurish on every level. The script is, there's literally one point where one character looks down and says, "Nobody understands me." Like, the script is so unsubtle. The characters state exactly what they're thinking at all times. There is no depth to anything they say at all. The acting is dreadful, but I'm going to put this firmly down to Sam, whatever his name is, as the directing of their performances is where I think the problem is, because Julia Roberts, Ethan Hawke, Myha'la Ali are all great actors. Even Kevin Bacon shows up for 10 minutes. He's great too, usually. Everyone's terrible in this film because they are laden with the stupid person's idea of a clever movie. It is so...
That's a good way to put it, actually. Like,
it is so...
stupid person
it is
smart.
so base level. There's some good ideas in here. All of them handled terribly. I think it's interesting what you talk about the cinematography. There's one particular scene that I actually quite like that it's going to get the single star from me for this one scene where the cinematographer is doing his best to make it seem interesting. And it is so badly written and acted and directed. When I talk about, as I have done before, the feeling of the lowest common denominator Netflix movie just pumping out their capital C content every week has got to be something, 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 and then it gets buried. Ghosted was the same kind of feel as well. But at least Ghosted had two very attractive people trying to be charming. I'm not saying succeeding, but this is just first pass script directing, and it doesn't. Mr. Robot is highly regarded. I've never seen it, but I am kind of shocked
I'm less
that.
likely. I've never seen it either, and I am less likely to check it out now.
I
And
mean, I have no.
the
Yeah,
one thing
I'm
I
never gonna.
understand is that it is also fairly ham-handed.
Right. Ham-handed bit is an understatement with this film. There is no subtlety to anything anyone says or does. Characters immediately launch. They're just archetypes who immediately launch into their place in the narrative without any journey at all. If people need to hate each other eventually, they hate each other instantly, because that's just the quickest way to tell the story. There's no journey, there's no arc for any of them. And just at the very, very, very end, where it starts to have a message about holding on to the things you love at times of great peril, just ends. Just ends. And it's nowhere near as clever as it thinks it is.
So it's interesting.
It
I read I read like a plot synopsis because I watched this movie approximately a week ago. It came out on we're recording this on the 17th of December. This movie came out on the 9th. Um, yeah, but not whatever. Friday before this past one. And in recording today, I kind of like forgot big swathes of it, which is a pretty big red flag if you ask me. But the plot synopsis actually implies that the ending is meant to be like a bomb going off and like killing the character who's on screen at the moment, and like that is not indicated in the shot in question at all, like just at all. It just
well,
like it cuts to black. It cuts to black as a character like finally achieves a thing they've been trying to achieve through the whole movie, but there's no indication. No, for
no.
a movie that's so unsubtle, generally speaking, there's not even the slightest indication that it's like some kind of bomb or weapon going off that's making it cut to black. It just cuts to black, which I think honestly is a way more interesting ending. Like having it cut to black and in that particular, without spoiling the ending, having it just cut to black as this character finally like achieves this quest they've been on. And what that might say about the character and about us as a society is way more interesting than it just being a bomb going off. But it doesn't matter because, like, again, it is not indicated in that scene that there's a bomb going off. There's a bomb has just gone off a few minutes earlier in a place far enough that's supposed to be far away, but is close
Oh
enough
my
you
god.
can clearly see. That's a whole other
It's
problem.
oh god.
Um,
Yeah.
and I sort of get the like, like we're in the country, it's the middle of nowhere, but we're like 20 minutes from the city. Like that is, it's not a totally out there thing among people who primarily live in the city, or have never lived in the country. But I don't know. I don't really
It's
want to spend
awful.
very much time with this movie because it's such a nothing, right? Like
There's
again, it's less nothing than Ghosted, and it's less nothing than Hypnotic, but that is it's still nothing. I don't ever need or want to see it again, ever.
no.
And
It it
and that's it.
it creates story points and then just ignores them. And there's one point, I don't care that I'm spoiling this. There's one point where one character loses his teeth, and you couldn't get a better analogy for this movie. It's completely toothless, and then he's used as motivation to get to a certain location, and then he can barely move. He's vomiting up blood, and then he's in the car. He's just fine because the movie at that point doesn't need him to be sick anymore, and it's
Yeah,
just
it also
ridiculous.
offers no explanation as to why he's
No,
losing his teeth and literally nobody else does. Like
yeah,
it doesn't
nothing makes
explore.
sense.
It's almost like I do remember thinking when we first watched it that I was like, so like I feel like if this was a Netflix series, that would have been the end of episode 2. Like where the movie
Mm-hmm.
ends would have been the end of episode 2, and it would
Mm-hmm.
have been one of those Netflix series that we think is pretty okay because there's some good episodes, but it way overstays its welcome. Like it's just too long. It doesn't get to its points fast enough. But instead, it's a 2-hour movie that ends just as things might be getting interesting. And I don't know.
I have seen too many good movies this year, and I've seen some standouts to give a free pass to anything that has been just pushed out. It's just a first pass that they've just like, oh, someone needs to. It'll create some buzz because it's got some like red pill stuff in there. And he drinks blue water. What does it mean? Like, it's just bullshit. All of it. It's completely empty. It's completely vacant of any like meaning or intention, and it's just first pass thrown out. Oh, let's spend our budget on Julie Roberts and Ethan Hawke, and then have them. Then let's have like the new people that turn up. Let's have them black, so we can add in this like racist undertone that isn't an undertone at all because they just state it. It's just ridiculously bad. 1 star. 1 star for when the Teslas crash, and the cinematographer's like, okay, well, I've seen Children of Men. We're going to try and do that as the Teslas crash around us. And that's the literally only good part of this movie. It's irredeemably terrible. And I'd be embarrassed. I'd be embarrassed if I was involved with this on Netflix.
The Teslas crashing is a good scene for sure. I will give it 2 stars. Because I liked Julia Roberts and I liked Ethan Hawke despite the material. Mm-hmm. And the Tesla's crashing, plus there's a couple of moments where the cinematography is very extra in a way that I enjoyed. So I will give it. It takes a lot for me to give something only 1, and this is by far not the worst thing I've seen this year. Mm-hmm. And unlike Hypnotic, it didn't waste William Fichtner, so 2 stars.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Don't watch this movie. It's not worth your time. Second film is maybe though.
Yeah, the second film. So actually, why don't you just take us through? Because I tried to give us the basics on that one. It's your turn to give us the basic rundown on the Alexander Payne, Paul Giamatti collaboration that is The Holdovers.
Well, if you like the movie The Breakfast Club, and like the movie Dead Poets Society, and it's somewhere in there, in that Venn diagram, it's Paul Giamatti is a teacher at a boys' college in 1970s New England, near Boston, and in Massachusetts, apparently. And it comes to Christmas, and some of the boys have to stay. If they don't have the possibility for going home, they have to stay over in the school. They are the holdovers. And every year, one of the teachers gets the short straw and has to basically stay with them over Christmas, basically just to keep them alive. Their only responsibility is to make sure these kids don't die. Because this is a public school funded by very rich people, and their children are there. So they're very focused on keeping that flow of income.
I'm just going to interrupt long enough to say that in North American parlance, it is a private school.
Oh, that's a very English thing. So they are very typical like public school boys that all of our politics is flooded with. It's so weird that we say public school when it is a private school. You're right. Why do we do that? Okay, sorry. It's a private school. I guess a public school would be a comprehensive for you, right?
Anyway. Like a normal high school. This is like a private boarding school for the elite, the children of the elite.
Children of the elite, and it's Barton. I don't know if it's the same Barton as in Pitch Perfect, but I've been spending the rest of the week trying to work out if those two are in the same universe. But that's a different podcast.
It's not spelled the same, so it can't be.
Oh, damn it!
Because in this movie, it's Barton with a T. And in Pitch Perfect, it's Barden with a D.
Oh, really? See, in American pronunciation, they both sound the same, so I had no idea. So Paul Giamatti is a long-standing teacher there that is very traditional and very strict. He's a history teacher, and the teacher who's meant to look after the kids over Christmas pretends his mother's sick, so he gets out of that. And Paul Giamatti, having no one to go to, is then given the responsibility. And it's clear from the beginning that he is he has lots of friction with the head. He doesn't really mix with the other teachers. He's quite standoffish. And in his classes, he's very, very strict indeed. and it's all about achievement. It's all about study, and he delivers. He clearly knows a lot, but he delivers it in a very dry way. So his 17-year-old boy students are very disengaged. So the Holdovers is basically these begins to be these 5 kids who have to stay over Christmas, and the friction that ensues because he wants to keep teaching them, and they very much don't want to be there. They don't want to learn what's meant to be stuff over their vacation, and also like the Breakfast Club, their personalities are so influenced by their parents as well. We learn a lot about them and how fucked up they are by their parents, by their rich upbringings. And not to spoil what happens, but then it kind of evolves that the focus becomes very much on Paul Giamatti and Dominic Senna's character Angus, and you know exactly what's going to happen in this movie from the very beginning. In terms of, like, you've seen movies where the standoffish teacher has to look after the roguish student, and they learn from each other and they become more open to each other, and this is that movie. It's a Christmas movie, but it's a misery watch in many ways. But
it's very melancholy
yes,
for sure.
The highlight here, it goes to perhaps further places when they actually leave the school. It goes to perhaps a wider range of places that you perhaps were expecting, but you know how this movie is going to end. And when it does end, it has a bit of a bittersweet ending, but it is quite satisfying. And the key here is Paul Giamatti, who is so charismatic, and I'm sure so handsome and cheeky. Like, if you go and watch him in Shoot 'Em Up, and then go watch him in this, and he is so amazing in this film at unwrapping this character slowly from his very tight, standoffish character at the beginning to where it evolves in the end. And you see that charm come out. And a lot of this is down to Dominic Sessa, who's pretty much a newcomer, but he has, as Angus in this, I think he does a really great job of portraying all these the terrible things that have formed him from his family life as well. So it's a very derivative movie. You know exactly what's going to happen, but it is quite moving when it gets there. For me, anyway. What's your? I know I felt moved by this because I as a teacher, like, the most emotional part of being a teacher was seeing the change in your students when you actually see it in front of you, and this film moved to that part of me for sure. But how did you feel?
So lots of people are talking about this movie in very positive light, because it did some festival runs earlier. So I know some people who've already seen it, and I was very much, given the type of movie that it is, I was sort of very much expecting to like connect with it very deeply, and I didn't. And that makes it sound like it's a failure of expectations, but I still really liked it. Like, I'm still going to give it a high rating, just for the record. I just didn't like it. Didn't like move me to my core in a way that I kind of expected, which is a very unfair thing to say about film, I would say. Because it's really well done. It's really well performed. Dominic Sessa is not just kind of a newcomer. This is his first ever credit. He went to an audition. What's the story here? I read it yesterday. He was discovered by casting director Susan Shopmaker, who offered Deerfield Academy students a chance to audition for the film, since the film was shooting at that location. Like, he's a student at the real school where they shot this movie.
Really, that's amazing.
But my like one line takeaway is that I hope this kid gets an amazing agent, because it would be a real shame if this is the only time we ever see him. And that's the kind of thing that can definitely happen, right? Like, you find someone and they either make no choices or bad choices. I hope this kid gets like really great representation that finds him some really great roles to sink his teeth into, because I think he is legitimately great. I think Paul Giamatti is also legitimately great in that reliable Paul Giamatti way. Like, he's never bad. Even when he's in a bad movie, he's not bad. He's such an interesting performer, and gives his all to characters in a way that few actors I feel really do.
Mm-hmm.
And this being it's interesting to me. It's actually kind of upsetting to me that this is only his second ever collaboration with Alexander Payne after Sideways, which was like 20 years ago or something. Probably not that long, but a long time ago. Because I feel like that movie is so good and this movie is so good, and I feel deprived of the like Scorsese De Niro type relationship he could have had with Alexander Payne at this point, you know?
I haven't seen Sideways, actually.
Oh, that's a solvable problem.
Mm-hmm.
For me, though, the real revelation here is Divine Randolph, who. So the boys are held over with Paul Giamatti, and also Divine Randolph is there. She's the head of the kitchen for this private school. She stays over Christmas as well. She provides food for the boys, and she's also the mother of a son who the year before had graduated from the academy. She worked there to get him into the academy. And being not of the privileged few, he didn't get into a further university and thus went into the military and was killed. So she's playing this grieving mother. And I think that it's, without trying to take anything away from Giamatti and Sessa, she is so good in every scene. And I know that everyone's already talking about her, but if she isn't up for every award under the sun this year, I will be legitimately shocked. Like, I expect that some of the award shows will give Paul Giamatti a nod, and he probably won't win. I legitimately think this is one of the best supporting performances I've seen all year, which is saying something when you also consider that her character is the most thinly sketched of anyone in the film. She does so much with so little. Like, the only real, there's one real emotional gut punch scene she has in the middle that ends before it came. Like, it's still really affecting, but it's cut short in a way that I found really frustrating, because I felt like it was about to get to a place, a deeper place, but it just cuts, and I found that really frustrating. And I think that probably informs how I think about the whole movie, and that there's lots of scenes that get really close to being somewhere really good and really interesting and really honest and really true, and then it just sort of stops right before it gets there. And I find that a little frustrating. And that being said, it's still an amazing movie you should definitely see. It's a wonderfully melancholy, uplifting bummer, in the best way. And if the only thing we ever get out of it is that Divine Randolph wins an Oscar and Dominic Sessa becomes like an amazing character performer in all of your favorite indie films for the next 10 years, I would be very happy. Paul Giamatti will be fine. He'll land on his feet. He's an amazing actor. But I want those two in particular to be catapulted to stardom because of this film. But yeah, it's great. You should definitely see it. It's available on demand. You should just rent it. It's a wonderful, and it's set at Christmas, and it could not be set any other time.
Yeah,
like it just couldn't be summer vacation. You know, like it's very purposeful in most of its choices, story wise. And then my other favorite thing about it, and I think this probably lifts my opinion about it, is that it is such a they don't make them like that anymore type film, that they've literally adopted the cinematic language of the 70s, complete with zooms and swipes and camera angles and techniques and film grain. Like, if you watch this movie and you didn't know who anyone was and you were like, I bet this movie came out in like 1976, that would be an understandable reaction. It is made to look like a movie, not just be set in 1970 and 71, but to look like a movie that was made in 1975. I think that's a real feat, and in a way that I really appreciated, like that level of attention to detail, not just in the immediate direction, but in the actual way they're going to present this is really really great. But yeah, so I really like this film. It's a really great film. It probably won't make my top 10 list, but it is. It would certainly make my top 20 for this year. So yeah, it's great. It's great. You should definitely see it. Anywhere you can see it at home now. If you can't see it in a cinema, do that. But it's available at home now, so just you can rent it at home. You should watch it at home.
Even the aspect ratio is a little tighter, and it does. One thing that really struck me is that we talked a lot about lack of color in films at the moment, and this film is a perfect example of how to use a muted color palette, because it is stone and it's Christmas and there's snow and it's Boston, so that it's very icy, very snowy, and it's how to use contrast in the color palette to make muted colors look sensational. This film looks beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and it is just really, really well planned. Every shot is very, very well composed and planned. Like the opening in particular, the first 5 minutes kind of does that very 70s thing of giving you a ton of credits over opening vignettes, and there's lots of shadow work against the snow and the buildings. So he uses red as an accent all the way through the movie, and it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And then when it does go inside, there's a party later in the house. It goes very vibrant and very warm, and it's really lovely. And it's interesting what you were saying about the scenes getting to a point and then moving on. And I think that's probably related to my criticism, really, is that it felt a bit long. Like, I think they could have exactly what you're saying, maybe focus a bit more on what they had and remove a beat somewhere or remove a section. Because I did find that the characters were flip-flopping a bit. Like, they would learn a bit and then go back a bit and learn a bit and go back a bit, especially Giamatti's character. There's one key moment where he kind of turns a corner and then goes back to being a bit of a grouch again, and before he turns the corner again, and I feel like that could have been tightened up a bit. But by and large, it was very effective, I thought.
Yeah, I get what you're saying with Giamatti's character. It's not incorrect. I sort of feel okay about that aspect of it, because it's a very human response, right? Like we're learning to be better doesn't mean we've immediately learned to be better. Like, we have to fight against our nature for a while when we're making a pretty significant change like that. My bigger problem is in, like, again, in that one scene, which is at the party, where Divine Randolph's character is sort of really grappling with the loss of her son, and it gets to a point where the three main characters plus another important supporting character are in the room together, and she's starting to make this, like, confession of her emotions, and then it just stops. It just cuts and moves on to the next scene. And there's a few scenes like that where it stops, like, right before the truth of it was about to happen. You know what I mean? And I don't think that makes it a bad film. I just think it keeps it from being a great one. Right?
That's fair.
So, yeah.
How many stars are you going with this? I can't work out where you're landing, if you're 3 or 4.
It's still 4. Like I say, if this was, it's not going to make my top 10 list of the year. It would, but if we were doing a top 20, it would make that list. Like, it would be. There's too many other films I've adored greatly this year for this to be in my top 10. But honestly, though, there's a subset of our audience who this is going to be their favorite movie, and I cannot wait for, if you're listening to this and you watch The Holdovers and it turns out to be your favorite movie, I'm so happy for you, because this is exactly the kind of thing that a lot of people will latch onto in that way, and I think you're really going to like it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like I'm being super negative, and I'm not. I'm just, like, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to explain that, like, there's these few nitpicky things that keep me from thinking it's an absolute masterpiece. You know, like, it is a great film, and you should definitely see it. it's just not. It's not the masterpiece that it maybe could have been, in my opinion. Which, again, is super unfair. But
no, that's fine.
Yeah,
I don't disagree at all with anything you're saying. I think as a few derivative story choices about how to use certain characters that are a bit stereotypical, but It is just a great showcase, a great acting showcase. And there's a few moments where Giamatti, who's been this kind of, he underplays himself in order to appear uncharismatic. But there's a few moments where the Giamatti voice comes out, including, what's the line? Curl your toes! Completely out of context. And he just lets rip with that voice that is in there all the time. That's nice. And it's a great example of how to slowly physically and mentally unwrap this character. It's just that movie. It's one of those movies. So it's full from me as well.
If you're the type of person who tends to latch on to films about fathers and sons or father figures and sons, then this movie will be for you. Like, that's, I think, what keeps it, for me, what keeps it at a 4 rather than a 3 out of 5 is that the father-son relationship, like the father figure and son figure relationship between these two actors, is very, very honest, very truthful, and very pure, in a way that I very, very much appreciated. And I can definitely see other people like me who tend to latch on to stories of fathers and sons. Like, this will be your favorite movie, and I'm very happy for you. And you should definitely see it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Good. Well, shall we wrap it there for Christmas?
I mean, we probably should. So there you have it. One movie we're not going to even name again, and then the Holdovers. There will be, if you check out the homepage for this episode, which will be at the awesomefriday.ca homepage, there will be streaming links for Powered by Just Watch. If you use those links to find and watch either of these films, that helps us keep the lights on here at Awesome Friday headquarters. So please feel free to do that. The page will be linked in the show notes. We are also, if you want to find us and interact with us, we're on basically all of the socials. The show is at Awesome Friday CA, basically everywhere. Simon's not on the socials, but I am. You can find me at SmatthewAF most of the places. And the best way to keep up with with both of us and the show is to bookmark and follow our various homepages, which are stretched.ca for me, temporarypen.com for Simon, and awesomefriday.ca for the show. If you like what you heard, the best way to support us, honestly, is to tell your friends and to subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice and give us a high 5-star review on your platform of choice. These are the things that get us in front of more earballs. But if you would like to support us more directly, we do have a Patreon. And if you subscribe to that Patreon, you do get a bonus episode every week. This week, we talked about our top Scrooges, our favorite background jokes, and a number of other things. It's always a fun time and a little more rambly in a way that I think is enjoyable. And you can get access to that for as little as $2 Canadian a month, which is less than the price of a cup of coffee anywhere at this point.
It really is.
So yeah. Last but certainly not least, we are here in Vancouver on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish nations. Today is December 17th. Next week is Christmas. We will be off, but we'll be back at the end of the year, most likely with our end of year best of lists, which we're starting to organize now. And we're looking forward to that episode. But in the meantime, have yourself a great holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Jubilant Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Have a great one. And we will see you at the end of the year. Thank you so much
Merry Christmas
for joining us on this awesome Friday.
Merry Christmas. We love you.